I've got here a Rohloff hub. It's got about 12,000 miles or about 19,000 kilometres on it, and last week or so it started slipping in all the gears. It's like it's just not engaging gear. So what I'm going to do is have a look at replacing the pawl springs in there. May wonder why I'm going straight in with the pawl springs, but they are so cheap. You know, why would you not try it? And I believe it's quite easy to do. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that this is in 14th gear. Now, if you forget to do that before you take the wheel off the bike, it's quite simple to do that. We just need an 8mm socket over the end here. This is where the gearbox, the cables fit onto it. The little box fits over here. You just put an 8mm socket over there and turn anti-clockwise all the way, and if it's not, you can just hear it click as it indexes. That's it in 14th gear. Now this torque arm is held on with 5 T20 Torx screws. I've given them a soak in WD-40, and we just need a Torx bit to undo these. Right, first problem I've encountered, I cleaned all these out, but obviously there must have been some dirt in one of them. I've rounded off the Torx bolt. So we'll just show you a quick trick as to how to get off a rounded Torx screw. So what we're going to do is use a Dremel to cut 2 little slots in the Torx screw, and then we'll get that out with a screwdriver. So unfortunately this is really jammed in well, so I think I'm just going to have to cut the whole of the top of the Torx bolt off. Just get in there with the drill and drill this one out. So we've got the torque plate off, and now this plate here seems to be held on with 2 crossheads, and if we can see here, this should be how it turns. So if I rotate, yeah, so when you change gear, it's rotating this gear in here. Right, now this should come off. Just ease that off. There we go. You can see why that didn't want to come out. It's bent, so somebody cross-threaded it when this must be the local bike shop when they assembled it. Right, so the 2 pawl springs are here and here, so they should just ease out. There's one. That's the other. So as you can see, they're actually really tiny. That's why they're very cheap. Now I can actually smell the gearbox oil. So there's the main seal here. So definitely don't want to tip the gearbox the other way, else oil will pour out of that. We'll say be careful. There is a little gasket which goes in there. So careful not to lose that. And I've had a look at the teeth on that. That's fine. So those teeth are not worn at all, so that is definitely not the cause of the gears slipping. But something, there's no need to take these two screws out. As you can see, they're actually quite short, and they're just appears to be some spacers, and they're just holding these spacers on, so there's no need to take these off. Okay, the new springs have arrived, and I've got a cup of tea, so we can now start to put this back together again. I've got the new springs here on the left and the old springs here on the right. Now the old springs to me look completely undamaged and no difference, so I'm now beginning to wonder if the springs are the issue. Now I'm not sure it is the pawl springs. What I'm going to do, I'm also going to replace the two gear cables as well. So again, these cost next to nothing, they're like £2 each. So I might as well replace them and make sure that's all fully adjusted, absolutely correct whilst I'm doing it. It's not going to take very much long at all. I've also got a replacement screw for the that I had to drill out, but I couldn't get the right length. It's M4 by 25 you need, but I'm just going to have to just cut this to length. Okay, so the springs just go straight in. Right, we now have a right and wrong way to do this. So here and here are my two pawl springs. Up here is a grub screw. So when this goes on, the blind hole here has to be directly over the grub screw, and these two pins fit over the pawl spring. So we'll put the gear on again, and just put a tiny little bit of molybdenum disulfide grease on that. You don't need to worry about the alignment of the gears in here, because that just spins, and so long as we turn it into 14th, everything's going to be fine. So the blind hole over the grub screw, that will go there, and there we are, back together. We'll now put the torque arm back on. There is a right and a wrong way. The gearbox arm, that needs to be aligned with your cable for the gear change, so it aligns with those nice and easy. And then this torque arm, in the case of my bike, this hooks up under the brake caliper, and that stops the hub rotating. So all your torque is transferred through this. If you didn't have this, the whole thing would rotate and nothing, and your bike wouldn't move forward. And the reason this needs to be aligned is nothing to do with the gearbox itself. It's just to get a straight cable running to your gearbox. And I put a tiny smear of molybdenum disulfide grease on all of these, and that basically, you should always grease the bolts. One, it's easier to get them back out again, and two, you actually get a higher clamping force for the torque. The replacement bolt I got is actually a flathead, not a Torx head, but it doesn't matter. It's an M4, so it will countersunk, so it will work. Now what I can't find out for this is the torque settings for these, but it's not going to be much for M4. It'll probably be below the setting on my torque wrench. So the free hub, you can hear it clicking, so that's definitely working. And then go the other way, yeah, that's in drive. So the final thing we need to do is torque up these. According to Rohloff, if you over tighten these, it can cause gear slippage, and it's just a simple torque wrench. The maximum tightening torque for these is 34 Newton meters. Right, now back. Been for a test ride, and the gears on the Rohloff are no longer slipping anymore. So what I've done, I've replaced the pawl springs in there, and I've replaced the gear cables, and I've made sure that the axle nuts are correctly tightened to no more than 34 Newton meters, and that's fixed the slipping. As for which one it was, anybody's guess, but actually it's just so easy to replace the pawl springs and replace the gear cables. They were £2. Two gear cables were £4, so it's £6 to fix it. You just might as well do it. So I hope you find the video useful, and if you do suffer problems with the gears spinning on your Rohloff, you now know how to fix it. Thanks.